Wait, before you decide this story isn't for you, before you scroll away, imagine standing in the pouring rain, your last chance slipping through your fingers, and then hearing someone call your name. If stories about resilience, unexpected kindness, and second chances move you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You never know which story might remind you not to give up. The rain fell in heavy sheets against the glass towers of downtown Chicago, turning the sidewalks into rivers of gray. Daniel Harper stood under the narrow awning of a coffee shop across from Harlow Industries, clutching a worn leather folder to his chest. Inside it were his resume, recommendation letters, and a crayon drawing of a house with 3 stick figures, him and his twin daughters, Sophie and Sadie. Above the house, in uneven purple letters, they had written, "Good luck, Daddy." Daniel hadn't always looked this tired. At 34, streaks of silver had begun creeping into his dark hair, not from age but from strain. 2 years earlier, he had buried his wife, Emily, after a sudden aneurysm that left him alone with 2 4-year-olds and a mountain of medical debt. He had been a project manager at a mid-sized logistics company then. When grief hollowed him out and he missed too many days of work, the company let him go. "We're so sorry for your loss," they'd said, "but business has to go on." Business always went on. He took whatever work he could, night shifts at a warehouse, freelance scheduling gigs online, delivering groceries between daycare pickups. But the debts didn't shrink, and neither did the girls' needs. When he saw the listing for operations coordinator at Harlow Industries, he hesitated. The company was a global powerhouse in sustainable infrastructure, founded and led by the youngest self-made billionaire in Illinois, Victoria Harlow. People called her ruthless, efficient, untouchable, but the salary listed could change everything. The interview that morning had started well enough. The HR manager, polite but distant, asked about his experience coordinating supply chains and managing teams. Daniel answered carefully, aware of the thin line between confidence and desperation. He spoke of leading crews during winter storms, rerouting shipments during a trucking strike, building spreadsheets at midnight while his daughters slept on either side of him. Then came the gap. "I see there's a period of about 18 months without formal employment," the HR manager noted. Daniel swallowed. "My wife passed away unexpectedly. I became the primary caregiver for my daughters. I've been working contract jobs while raising them." A silence followed, a subtle shift in posture. Notes scribbled. "Thank you for your honesty," she said. "We'll be in touch." He knew what that meant. By the time he stepped out of the building, the sky had darkened. He hadn't even made it halfway down the block before his phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Harper," a crisp voice asked. "We regret to inform you that we've decided to move forward with candidates whose recent experience more closely aligns with our current needs." The words hit harder than the rain now soaking through his jacket. "I understand," he managed. He ended the call and stood still for a long moment. He had promised the girls pancakes for dinner if the interview went well. He had allowed himself, just for a second, to imagine telling them they wouldn't have to move out of their apartment when the lease ended. Instead, he stepped off the curb and into the rain. Inside the 42nd floor office of Harlow Industries, Victoria Harlow was reviewing final candidate summaries for the operations coordinator role. At 39, she had built her empire from a college dorm room, designing modular solar grids that transformed rural communities. The media loved her sharp suits and sharper interviews. They didn't love the rumors that she had no time for weakness. She skimmed Daniel Harper's file, prepared to sign off on the recommended candidate. But something made her pause. There was a handwritten note attached from the HR manager: strong leadership background but extended employment gap due to family circumstances. May struggle with schedule flexibility. Victoria frowned. She flipped back to his resume. 10 years of progressive responsibility. Commendations for crisis management. A letter from a former supervisor describing him as steady under pressure, the kind of leader people trust when things fall apart. She stared at the employment gap again. Family circumstances. Without fully understanding why, she stood and walked to the window. Down below, people scattered under umbrellas. And there, just beyond the building's entrance, she saw him. The man from the small photo attached to the resume. He was standing in the rain, shoulders slightly slumped, staring at his phone as if hoping it would change its mind. Something tugged at her memory. Years ago, before the billions in the headlines, she had sat in a similar rainstorm outside a venture capital firm. They had rejected her prototype as too risky. She had cried in the parking lot, certain she had failed everyone who believed in her. No one had chased her then. "Get me his number," she said to her assistant. "Now." But when she called, it went straight to voicemail. On impulse, a move that would have shocked her board, Victoria grabbed her coat and headed for the elevator. By the time she pushed through the revolving doors, the rain had intensified. She scanned the street until she saw him halfway down the block, walking quickly, as if trying to outrun disappointment. "Mr. Harper," she called. He didn't turn at first. She jogged forward, heels splashing through puddles. "Daniel." He stopped and looked back, confusion flashing across his face as he recognized her from the company website and business magazines. "Ms. Harlow." They stood facing each other in the downpour, strangers bound by a decision made minutes earlier. "I read your file," she said, slightly out of breath. "And I think we made a mistake." Daniel blinked, rain dripping from his lashes. "I'm sorry, I built this company on the belief that resilience matters more than perfection. Somewhere along the way, we started filtering out people who've actually had to survive something." She hesitated, unused to explaining herself. "Tell me about your daughters." The question caught him off guard. Of all the things he expected her to say, that wasn't one. "They're 6, he said softly. "Sophie loves dinosaurs. Sadie wants to be an astronaut. They think I can fix anything." "And can you?" Victoria asked. He gave a tired half-smile. "I'm trying." She studied him, not the damp suit or the worn shoes, but the steadiness in his gaze despite everything. "If I offered you the job," she said, "with flexible hours and the option to work remotely when needed, could you deliver?" "Yes," he said immediately. Then, more measured, "Yes. I would give everything I have." "I don't want everything," she replied. "I want your best, and I want you to keep enough for them." That was how Daniel Harper walked back into Harlow Industries, not as a rejected candidate, but as a man given a second chance. The challenges didn't disappear overnight. Some colleagues questioned the CEO's sudden interest in a mid-level hire. A few resented the accommodations he received. Balancing emergency conference calls with school recitals tested him daily. There were nights he worked until 2 a.m., reviewing supply chain data while assembling science fair posters. But Daniel delivered. When a major supplier defaulted during a critical infrastructure rollout in Arizona, it was Daniel who proposed a contingency plan, leveraging smaller regional vendors others had overlooked. When a winter storm threatened a multi-million-dollar installation, he coordinated teams across 3 states, drawing on the very crisis management skills honed during his warehouse nights. Victoria watched quietly. She didn't interfere. She simply observed that the man who had stood in the rain was the same man who now steadied entire divisions when pressure mounted. Months later, at the company's annual meeting, Victoria did something unprecedented. She shared his story, not as charity, not as inspiration porn, but as a reminder. "We talk about innovation," she said to hundreds of employees, "but real innovation starts with empathy. We nearly passed on one of our strongest leaders because his resume included grief. Because it included responsibility." Daniel sat in the audience, Sophie and Sadie beside him in new dresses, their eyes wide at the size of the auditorium. "We are updating our hiring policies," Victoria continued. "We will no longer treat caregiving, hardship, or life itself as liabilities. They are experiences that shape extraordinary people." Applause filled the room, but Daniel heard only his daughter's whispers. "That's our daddy," Sadie said. "He fixes big things," Sophie added. That night, back in their apartment, soon to be upgraded thanks to his stable income, Daniel tucked the girls into bed. The crayon drawing still hung on the fridge, but now there was a new one beside it, a tall building in the rain, with a tiny figure running toward another. "Who's that?" he asked. "That's the lady who chased you," Sophie said. "She didn't let you be sad." Daniel smiled. "No, she didn't. Life didn't become perfect. There were still hard days. Still bills. Still moments when grief crept in unexpectedly. But there was also dignity restored. A workplace that valued humanity. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful people are the ones willing to run into the rain. So if you're standing in your own storm right now, feeling overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed, remember this: rejection is not the end of your story. Sometimes it's the moment just before someone recognizes your worth. And sometimes, even if no one chases you, you keep walking anyway, because the people who believe in you are waiting at home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who might be standing in the rain today. Because hope has a way of showing up when we least expect it, and sometimes, it comes running after us.